Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new Football Manager 2017 experiment, and in this one what we're going to do is swap all of the teams in the Premier League with all of the teams in the Vanarama National League South. So if we take a quick look at the Vanarama National League South, you'll see there are now 20 Premier League teams in there. There's also two other teams because it's a 22 team league, so Concord and East Thurrock are also in there, and I assume will get relegated from the game in the first season. I don't have the leagues below this loaded up. This is the lowest league it goes, so at least one Premier League team will also get relegated because there's 3 relegation places, so one of the Premier League teams is going to completely drop out of the game by the end of this season. Now if we take a look at the Premier League, you'll see that there are no Premier League teams left. They're all down in the Vanarama National League South, and all of the teams that we removed from that league have been put into the Premier League. So these teams have now just overnight been promoted 6 leagues. They've still got the same facilities, they've still got the same squad, the same budget. Everything else is exactly the same. If we take a quick look at their club details, you'll see they've still got a tiny reputation. Premier League clubs are closer to 8,000-9,000, 10,000 being the maximum limit. They've also still got a tiny attendance, tiny maximum club attendance. They've got absolutely no money. They're still semi-professional at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out, because it also means their sponsorship money is at the same level. Now I think that will start to change quite quickly as we go forward. More sponsorship deals will come in for these teams, but it also means that a non-league team is guaranteed to win the Premier League this season, which will be pretty funny to see. Now, as with the top tier, everybody in the bottom tier are also in the same position. So if we take a look at Arsenal, for instance, Arsenal have still got Arsene Wenger in charge. Per Mertesacker is still the captain. They've still got Alexis Sanchez. They're still rich. They're still in the Champions League. All of those things are the same. So there's a possibility that if a Premier League team can win the Champions League or win the Europa League, they will stay in the Champions League next season as well. And in theory, they could keep doing that right up until they're back in the Premier League. But that's unlikely to happen because they'll be playing lower league opposition. They'll be more caught out by the bigger teams that they take on in Europe. So that will be another thing that we'll keep an eye on. It won't just be the Premier League and bottom league that we'll take a look at. We'll take a look at the transfers, we'll take a look at the facilities, the amount of money the clubs have got. We'll also see how they're getting on in the FA Cup, how they're getting on in Europe. There's going to be an awful lot to keep an eye on as this goes forward. So I think the way we'll do it today is we're only going to go through the first season today. We'll see who wins the Premier League, see who gets promoted, who gets relegated, and we'll also go forward 2 months. We'll go to the end of the season, and then from then on we'll probably look at it 2 seasons at a time. So let's go forward a couple of months now. I don't want to dwell on too much right now because nothing else has changed except for me switching the leagues around. So let's go forward 2 months and take a look at the end of the transfer window. Well, as you can see, we are now in September, so the transfer window has closed, at least in the Premier League, and it means that as things stand, Oxford and Gosport are heading towards Premier League title. It's only 3 games in, a lot can still happen. Truro and Maidenhead not doing too well. Now the teams at the top, I am going to have a quick look at their finances. Obviously the club details haven't improved. Their general situation is they're now estimated at £59 million. That's an awful lot of money. If we have a look at the club details, nothing really changing with the attendance, still where it was, but they've now suddenly got a huge amount of money. They've got £15 million in the bank now, that has come out of absolutely nowhere. It must just be the TV money and other stuff coming in, because obviously these fixtures will be on the TV now. And if we have a look at the transfers for the Premier League, you'll see that there hasn't been any money spent because the teams just don't have any money. So they're still, the 2 paid transfers were to Ebbsfleet, who signed from Dover and Maidstone, Callum Driver and James Caton. So the Premier League window only had about 15 grand spent in it this season. But it's because most of the players are just, the clubs don't have the reputation or the finances to bring these players in. And this is something that keeps coming up in our experiments. Reputation is the biggest thing that comes into play. And it's going to take a while for these teams to build up their reputation for being in the Premier League. Obviously, the Premier League champions will get a huge bump in their reputation. But everybody else is going to be stuck down at this level of about 2,000, which is where they started. So we'll need to keep an eye on that, because until that goes up, they will not be able to sign bigger players, no matter how much cash they have in the bank. But by the same basis, the teams in the Vanarama National League South are also going to have that problem. but it will be more in their favour because they won't be getting the money coming in from the Premier League, but they'll still be getting sponsorship money. They should still be getting attendances. They still got the same stadiums. They should be getting the same reputation, so they should still be able to sign players. Whether or not they will be able to because their league they're in will be interesting to see. But Manchester United currently sitting at the top. Interesting that Middlesbrough and Bournemouth are down below East Thurrock. That's quite funny. But if we have a look at Manchester United, we can see their finances are okay. Their general information, pretty much where you would expect it to be at the start of the season, really. I think the estimated value has gone down by a few hundred million, but their reputation is still 8,750, and that will hold. So if we take a look at the transfers of this league, going into their transfers movements, we will see that even they haven't spent that much money. The only real paid transfers were to Derby and Norwich, and they weren't even big players. They were fringe players that have moved on. Everybody else, pretty much as it was, to be fair. Then nothing else has changed. So that is something interesting, that none of the Premier League teams have actually signed any players, but they also haven't had to let any go. I suppose the finances aren't an issue at the moment. Attracting sponsorship when their deals come to an end may be a problem, and when they aren't getting the TV money, when they're not in the Champions League and getting the money from there anymore, and their reputations start to take a huge hit because they're not winning the Premier League, they don't have their European coefficients, they're not in European competition, that will be when we can expect players to leave. But at the moment, there's not an awful lot to take a look at. So there's, I think, one other interesting thing we can take a look at before we go forward again, and that is the stadiums being used in the Premier League, because the Premier League obviously has limits on where you can't play. At the moment, it looks like the game's just letting teams do that. There's not a lot else they can do. They're still playing on grass, but there is a synthetic stadium being used at the moment. Now, I'm not sure if that will be the case if we have a look at the fixtures. But as you can see, the attendance only 298 in this game. I'm not sure I can find out where the match was played. From Woodside Park, yeah, this got a capacity of 4,000, and yet they've only pulled in a crowd of 298 in the Premier League, which is interesting. And that will be something to keep an eye on, is whether the facilities start to be improved and whether they relocate to other stadiums. And especially so if they qualify for the Champions League, how that will start to pan out. But I think that's all that's worth looking at 2 months in. Let's go to the end of the season and figure out what's gone on. Well, we're going to start with the Vanarama National League South, and as you can see, Chelsea were the champions for this one. They've managed to finish on 96 points, Liverpool just behind them by 2 points and missing out on promotion. But Manchester City went up through the playoffs despite being 14 points off the title. The playoffs definitely in their favour. So these two teams will win the race to the Premier League almost certainly, and they will see their reputation increase quicker than everybody else. And Middlesbrough, the team that have been relegated, just 4 points away from Swansea, 5 points away from Hull. There wasn't an awful lot in that. The two teams at the bottom, as you would expect, getting relegated. I am interested to see. They both won a game, so I'm interested in who they beat or who they draw with. If we have a look at their senior squad schedule, in the Vanarama South, they beat Concord, had a win in the FA Cup, then defeats, but they managed to draw with Sunderland. Despite having a man sent off half an hour in, they managed to get a draw against Sunderland, which is quite funny. I imagine it would be something similar for the other teams as well. But Middlesbrough are going to be out of the game. They will not exist as a club next season. They may come back up and probably should come back up if the game automates it forward. So they should be promoted back into the league. But that will be something to keep an eye on. But the major thing is Chelsea and City and how quickly they'll progress and how long it takes the other teams to catch up and get out of this league. Because some of them are going to be stuck down here for a decade. Because only 2 teams can get promoted. There's 20 teams down here, so 2 of them will take 9-10 full seasons to actually get out of this league, and that's if they can hang on to their players who will be retiring, if they can bring new ones in, if they can keep their finances stable. there's a lot to take a look at as this goes forward. Now, we're going to have another look at the transfers because I think that there will have been more activity. And as you can see, the reputation has started to have an impact and a few players are leaving. It might just be that they weren't playing and so other clubs have come in. But it's interesting that they seem to be going to Chinese clubs. So Moussa Dembele, the biggest transfer, nearly £20 million transfer to Shandong. Johan Cabaye going to Jiangsu. Michael Keane moves to Atletico Madrid for nearly 15 million. Jordi Amat going to AC Milan. Matteo Darmian moving to Atletico Madrid for 12.75. Wayne Rooney has gone to, I think that's a club in Qatar for nearly £10 million. Victor Moses also leaving. Manchester United had quite a few players going. Interestingly, they've sold Zlatan Ibrahimovic to Arsenal, which is ridiculous. Why on earth would they sell him to Arsenal? Especially given Arsenal didn't win the league either. So that's just a bit of a strange one, to be honest. Antonio Valencia also left. Bastian Schweinsteiger went to LA Galaxy instead of Chicago Fire. Just having a look for other major names who might have gone out, possibly even on loan. These are all sort of fringe players. I wouldn't imagine many free transfers would be worth taking a look at. And there are a few loans as well, but nobody particularly big because these clubs do still have that high reputation. Now it is worth just taking a look at Chelsea now that the season is over and they are champions. Let's have a look at their general information. £870 million value, no change there. If we look at their finances in the club details, we'll see that they still have quite a big cash reserve as well. And in their reputation, actually, something else worth taking a look at, still got 8,687 reputation. So they haven't been hit too hard yet, but we still need to move time forward to see how they're getting on. But let's have a look at the Premier League and see who the new champions of the Premier League are. And it's Oxford City. Oxford City are the champions of England. I don't think you expected to say that before. In fact, I don't think that's ever been said before. Welling missing out by just 1 point. That is so close, that title race, right up to the very end. Oxford City actually lost on the final day of the season. Welling drawing 1-1. So had Welling won that game, they would have been champions of England instead. So final day drama, both teams choking at the end. But Oxford, Welling, Gosport and Eastbourne are all going to be in the Champions League next season, which will be quite interesting to take a look at. Chelmsford, Whitehawk and Ebbsfleet will all be in the Europa League as well, so they'll get a bit of extra cash for that. Obviously, Oxford will be going in at the group stage, as will Welling and Gosport, so they'll get a huge cash payout, and they'll get money per game as well if they manage to get a draw at least, which I think is a little bit unlikely, depending on whether they make huge transfers. Now, Hungerford, Poole and Truro are the teams that have got relegated, and I will expect them to fall through the floor now. They're probably going to hit a level above where they started. I don't think they'll drop down to the Vanarama National League South. I think they might drop to League 2, because obviously their finances will start to get better and better over time, and the club will build new infrastructure and sign better players because their reputation will go up. And they'll also have the Premier League parachute money coming in, which will make them very rich. So if we take a look at Truro, they've still got rich finances. They've just been relegated from the Premier League, but if we take a look at their club details, they've got an awful lot of money in the bank here. Let's just take a quick look. They've got £80 million cash in the bank at the end of the season. They'll obviously get money from parachute payments as well, but they'll have very little expenses up to now. Now let's have a quick look at the transfers in the Premier League this season. And still, virtually no money spent. People coming in on frees because they haven't got a transfer budget. So they wouldn't have brought anybody in. And the players that they are bringing in are free transfers almost entirely. Few players at the top, but they're still non-league players being brought into the Premier League. So hopefully next season they'll be given a big transfer budget. They'll get a nice reputation boost. Oxford, as champions of England, do have a reputation of 3,337. That's gone up by about 1,000, I think. So they've seen a nice boost as champions. When they enter the Champions League and start to get the European coefficients, that'll boost them even further. So it'll be interesting to see how this carries on. Now, if we drop down one league, we will see that the teams coming up to the Premier League, Barnsley have come up through the playoffs, but if we take a look at the league table, Newcastle inevitably have won the league, Norwich going up as well, so it'll be between those three teams, I imagine, as to who the Premier League champions will be next season. And it could be that it gives Newcastle 6 years of dominance at the top of that league if they can maintain their position, and they could become the superpower, which I would particularly enjoy as a Newcastle fan. But I think maybe if we have a quick look at the stadiums in the league now, we can see that they are now playing at different stadiums. So Chelmsford are now playing at Stamford Bridge. Eastbourne, Gosport and Whitehawk are all sharing the American Express Stadium. There's 5 Premier League teams at Selhurst Park, 3 at the Medeski, 3 at Vicarage Road, but very few teams still in their original stadiums, which is quite interesting. I think most of these will be looking to build their own new stadiums as they try to comply with the rules. I don't think there'd be a big change. If we take a look at the title deciding match, there was still only 811 attendance there in a game that decided the title. Obviously Welling were playing at home and looking to win the title, and even they only got an attendance of 1,000 in that game, so that will change as well. The facilities will get better. I think if we take a quick look at the facilities of Oxford, they have started to develop their training facilities. These are much better than they were before. They're now playing at the Medeski, and it looks like it's actually their stadium as well. If we take a look at the landmarks, it might tell us they moved to the Medeski. That was confirmed, so they aren't just renting it, I don't think. They've also only just turned professional. So there's a lot happened in this first part to this experiment. Obviously we will go at probably 10 years into the future. It's going to be a very long running experiment, but if you would like me to jump forward quicker in time rather than going a season to season, let me know in the comments. Drop a like on the video if you would like to see more of this experiment, and make sure to subscribe so you get the videos as they come up. But until next time, see ya.